Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fireside and Making It. I'm your host, Terry Woolman. My guest today is one of my favorite artists, Gabe Dixon. And I'll tell you about him in a moment. First, I want to say I appreciate you joining us so much every week. And I'd like to share with you my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and with abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better chance of finding you if you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance. And don't forget to have fun along the way. Gabe, welcome to the show. It's great to see you. It's been a while. And let me tell everybody about you, and then we'll start our conversation. And if you hear sirens in the background, I'm in a hotel room in Chicago, the sounds of the city. Musician Gabe Dixon began his career in the Nashville-based country band Six Shooter. Born and raised in Tennessee, he started playing keyboards professionally before entering high school. As a teenager, you could usually find him hauling his Hammond B3 organ in and out of Nashville nightclubs that he wasn't even old enough to legally enter. By the time he hit 18, Gabe was headed to Florida, Miami, actually, my hometown, to study classical piano at the University of Miami. It was there that he launched the Gabe Dixon Band, releasing 4 albums between 1998 and 2010, before establishing himself as a solo artist and founding his label, Rolling Ball Records. Dixon has performed and or recorded with the Tedeschi Trucks Band, Paul McCartney, Loggins Messina, Allison Krause, and Supertramp. His new album, which I've been listening to all week, is called Lay It On Me. Gabe Dixon, welcome to Making It.
Thanks, Terry. It's great to be here, man.
It really is great to see you. We've met a couple of times after your shows in LA, and you've always been kind enough just to take a minute after all your traveling and performing just to say hi to people that you barely know, and I appreciate that.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it's part of what we do. You know, it's about the relationships with our fans.
Yeah, and we have a mutual friend, I think, who introduced us the first time, named Cassie, and I remember you from 2011, and then I've seen you, like you said, a couple times since then. So
yeah,
it's nice to connect.
It is. It really is. And I miss seeing everybody, but we haven't seen you for a while in LA because it hasn't been safe or wise to go anyplace. But we're starting to get back out there again. And I know you just played. Actually, some neighbors of mine from LA just flew to Nashville and just saw you last week.
Wow. Okay, they saw the City Winery show. I guess
they saw the City Winery show and loved it.
Cool.
Absolutely loved it. By the way, Gabe, when I was preparing for the interview, I was typing up your bio and everything, and spell check kept changing your name to Babe Dixon. So
I can't explain that one. So.
Yeah.
I did. This is so random that this popped into my head, but when I was a teenager and I was in this like teen country band, I was actually in an episode of Big Bopper or Bop magazine, one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
And they put Gabe and they had crossed it out, and then they put Babe Dixon as
they were ahead of their time.
Of the article.
So, was that completely? That just took you back. Was that embarrassing at the time?
A little bit. I thought it was pretty cool though, because I was in like a teeny bopper magazine.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I was 15, so I was looking for any cred I could get if there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. I want to. There's so much to start with. I want to obviously start with your new record, and we'll talk a little bit about it right now, and then we'll get further into it as we get into the conversation. But there's a quote that you wrote. I read it, I believe, on your website that I want to read. and then you could respond to that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. This is basically about your new record, Lay It On Me. I've been on this journey of learning to believe in myself and my music for most of my life. I spent quite a bit of my time playing in support of other artists' visions over the years, but with this record, I finally reached a place where I'm able to fully realize my own.
Yeah.
Do you have more to say about that? I think it's really interesting that you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've deferred to a lot of people over, and I think that, when I first formed my band back in the day, I wanted it to be a true band, and it kind of like, I felt like I got to a point where we did something that was really great with the Gabe Dixon Band album that came out in 2008, and I felt like it was a creative success. It represented me, my songs, it represented my band and what we were up to at that time, and it like did pretty well, but it wasn't like a huge success. And I think the thing I took away from that was the wrong thing, which is that I don't have the answers for how to be creative. I don't have the answer for how to be like successful or whatever. So the next record, I kind of let everybody else do it. I sort of let the record label basically pick the producer. I let the producer pick all the musicians and tell me what kind of record he thought I should make. And, and I was like, maybe this will work, and it was actually a worse, it was not as successful, and both creatively and like whatever, as a record financially or whatever.
Right.
So I think after that, that was sort of a big learning moment for me, that it was like, okay, maybe and I mean, I'm sure you could relate to this. After a while, you start to see that most of the time I have the answers for, like, if I think it's great and it resonates with me, then it's more likely to resonate with other people. Even if it doesn't resonate with one or two who might be in a position to help make it more successul or whatever, like maybe that's a sign that that's not somebody I need to be working with. You know
There
what I
you
mean?
go. Yeah, I do.
And so and so the last one, the one before this was called Turns to Gold, and it was like a crowd-funded kind of album, and it was great, but it was its own thing, and I did a lot of like campaigning to get, and let people in on the process, and this was a wonderful thing that happened, and I had so much fun with it, and I got to kind of control all the creative parts of it, or most of them, and I loved the experience, and I got to go out and play, and I felt confident about the music, and it wasn't on a label or anything, but that it didn't need to be, for me, for a lot of reasons. And so then when this record came around, I wasn't even trying to make a record. I just got a couple writing dates with this guy, Dustin, and we just had fun. We were like, because for a while I was writing just for the marketplace or whatever, as a staff writer, for a publishing company. And this was just a session with a guy who was a great producer who happens to be a fan of what I do, and we were like, let's just have fun. And we wrote a song that wasn't intended for anything other than having fun.
Right, you wrote it for the sake of being creative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that song was called I Believe in Our Love, and it was so good and so much fun. I was like, let's make more music. And so what we ended up doing was the latest record together.
It's in hearing you explain your early experiences and the one that you've just had on the new record, your choices make sense to me. In other words, when you said your first album wasn't commercially as successful as everybody might have hoped, yourself included, you thought that maybe you had done something wrong, perhaps, musically. Yeah. So it would make sense to defer to people who know. But ultimately, the authenticity is what makes you so popular as an artist. Yeah. When you are singing, Till You're Gone or All Will Be Well. I mean, All Will Be Well is, I'm going to carry that song through my life. I already know it. And I send it to people when when I think they need to hear it. I'll send them your Spotify link, or get them a download,
That's awesome.
and that's because it's really, I've seen you play enough times that it feels authentically you.
Well, that's
And
good.
yeah, and I think that's, for any artist, that's what makes it special. But I guess in a way, I commend you for trying. I could never imagine having somebody assign me a producer to produce a record of mine and pick all the musicians. But I think that's partially because I'm a producer as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a beautiful responsibility that you have as an artist to be true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear it coming through in this new record also. And one of the things, yeah, of course, one of the things that I think makes it kind of fun and different, we were talking about this earlier before the live broadcast, is that typically you record live with other musicians as records were intended to be made. But this one, tell everybody the process, because it's very different for you.
Yeah, instead of I always, in every record before this one, I would rehearse a band beforehand, or we would be playing on tour, or we just like have this thing together, and then we'd be super well rehearsed. We'd go in the studio and just make a record of how we played, basically, and that is awesome. But with this album, we stacked all the tracks one on top of the other. And I never thought that you could get a good like band feel that way. I mean, I know that a lot of people, they program in and they make whole records inside their like digital audio software. But this was the kind of thing where we were actually playing live instruments,
right,
and recording them on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would start with a piano and a vocal, and then Dustin would go in and play the drums, and then he'd play the bass, and then I'd go in and replace the piano to kind of lock better with the drums and bass.
Right.
And then we'd add all kinds of fun stuff, whatever we felt like. Do we want acoustic guitar? Do we want percussion? Do we want crazy, wacky? Do we want like omnichord, weird keyboards,
Mm-hmm.
or what? And then at the end of it all, I'd sing like the final vocal. And man, it was really fun because we got to sit back and listen to it over and over and say, what does it need now?
Right.
Which I really kind of enjoyed, at least working with him like that, because he's such a great engineer and a great player. I mean, he can groove on the drums and the bass like incredibly well,
Mm-hmm.
So that was just, and we had a lot of, we kind of understood each other and liked each other's ideas. So it was a good process.
And not everybody can pull that off. Sometimes it sounds sterile, but I think for you, I envision that you're going to incorporate that new skill set into future recordings, even if it's combining, like some of us do, combining being in a room doing a bunch of things yourself or with another person, and then adding live strings and bringing in a live bass player and drummer and recutting. It, but the beauty and you pulled it off, you more than pulled it off. I mean, you basically, it feels like it's a band playing live in a studio together, supporting every nuance of your vocal performance.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I didn't think it could happen, to be honest. I was like,
of course,
how is this going to work?
Yeah.
But somehow it glued together,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I think because you were having fun with it.
Yeah.
I see Shelly is on stage right now. Hi, Shelly. Would you like to ask Gabe a question or make a comment?
Hi. I think you'd muted yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
There you go. Shelly, you are unmuted.
There you are.
Thank you. Hi, Terry. Hi, Gabe. How are you guys doing today? Happy
Pretty great.
holidays.
Great.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. You as well.
One of the things, Gabe, that I would love to say, I'm a singer-songwriter myself, so I wanted to give you some encouragement because though you may feel that your 2008 album wasn't maybe as commercially successful as you might have liked, it touched a lot more people than you could ever know. And as Terry was saying, the song All Will Be Well, that has just been a mantra and something I regularly play. I actually picked that song to dance with my youngest son at my wedding. I've
Wow.
sent it to multiple friends who are going through hard times or need some encouragement. I've shared it on Facebook. So I would just love to give you that encouragement. One of the
Thank you.
things that really touches me about your music is your authenticity. My parents were both musicians, my father, a country music artist. And one of the things that we love about country music is the storytelling and the ability to actually be transported into that situation and feel and see, as in All Will Be Well, all the children walking home past the factory. You can literally see the children walking home. You can feel the cold, the cars running fast along the interstate, illuminating what I know is true. You can feel the warmth, see the light, see you riding through that window. So
Awesome.
I can't wait to hear the new album. And I told Terry, I said, I'm fangirling a little bit here just because I love your music. And I so appreciate your songwriting and your authenticity.
That's so nice to hear. Thank you. I appreciate you saying
Thank you,
that.
Shelley.
Thank you.
Gabe, what's that like hearing somebody just recite back some words that you wrote on in your bedroom or, on a bus?
It's gratifying. I mean, it reminds me, because I think, again, in my own world of, I'm just day to day and I'm making music and this and that, and especially lately without playing live as much, it's kind of nice to get that feedback and know, hey, you know what you're doing is actually, it's actually helping people, or it's actually having an impact. So no, it makes me feel great. Like I ought to, maybe not give this up. Not like I was planning to, but it's nice to get that feedback. Sure.
It's funny that you say that. I know you're joking, but there's self-doubt is an interesting part of being an artist. And it's like you said, we get kicked to the curb a lot as artists, and like you said on this record, when something's great, you can feel it.
Yeah.
We are often our biggest, roughest critics, or harshest critics, but that's the beauty of being an artist. We're always going for the next level, and the bar keeps getting higher and higher. We raise it, and then we try to achieve it. As a writer and performer and everything, but being isolated and everything through this time, it certainly, puts a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
I agree, but so far so good. I would say don't give up.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd be disappointed.
Well, okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I got to a point where I just kind of had to say to just decide that this is what I do.
Right. Well, when was that? What was that moment like? Or
I'll tell you when it was. It was actually when I guess it was probably like maybe 15 years ago when I was really kind of struggling to make a living at music, even though I'd played with some great people and I'd had record deals and stuff like that. I'm back, it's kind of like in between cycles, and like it was a dry spell, and I was just hustling to try to make as much like money as a musician as I could, and not really doing that great. And all just running around town playing tons of gigs and trying to get things going again. And so I took an odd job, valet parking cars in Nashville through a friend. And I was valet parking, and I valeted one winter just to kind of supplement my income. And then the next year, I did the same thing, and I went over to my grandmother's house, and we were talking at Christmas or whatever, and she said, "So how's it going? How have you been doing? How's everything going?" I started talking about valet parking cars. Yeah, so I really like, we do this, and I've been driving this and that car, and blah blah blah. It's really fun. And then she just kind of like looked at me really patiently and was like, "How's the music going?" And I said, "Oh, well, I don't know. I've just been trying to like make some money like valeting." She's like, "Gabe, you're a musician." She's like, "You have been given a gift.
Right.
You need to be playing music. That's
Right.
what you need to be doing."
Right.
And so I kind of, I, you know, I don't know, something clicked inside me, and I was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, you know what? I am a musician, and I don't know what I have to do, but that's all I'm going to do now. And fortunately, I haven't had to take a job like that in a long time. It helps that my wife works too, but
Yeah.
but that would
It
have been
does, I'm
okay
sure.
anyway.
What a
But
beautiful gift,
yeah,
that moment.
she really did cut
Yeah.
it straight to the heart of it for me, and
Right.
I'll never forget that.
Right.
So.
I parked cars my first year living in LA, 1981.
Oh,
So
nice.
I feel you. And I remember, then I got my first tour playing with Billy Preston. And then I came back and it was amazing. And I couldn't get arrested like our
Right.
careers go.
Yeah.
And I was really afraid that I would have to start parking cars again. And one of my friends, a dear friend who was in the music business, on the business side of it, she said kind of the same thing. I got that little pep talk too. She goes, you're not going to need to park cars the rest of your life. You might do it once in a while to get through the humps, but please don't be afraid of that. Don't let that stop you. Don't let that veer you off course.
Yeah. And and so, I mean, now it's like, I look at it like I had every opportunity. Like, my parents supported my music. I went to music school. I got a degree in music in college. I've been like, if I can't make a living at music, nobody can. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
and like you said, and
no excuse.
And you have a gift. You do have a gift but you haven't wasted it. You've nurtured it. You went to one of the best schools in the world.
Yeah.
In Miami. I want to ask you, by the way, and it's so funny that you would use a car parking analogy that clearly hit home with me. And
I love it.
And just so you know, and our listeners too, in the over 200 interviews that I've done over the last few years, there are so many people, famous people, high profile people who drove taxis and, did what they needed to do.
Right.
Either at the beginning or at various points.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing, like your show is called Making It, right? And that's the thing I learned is like, that's like, there's no making it really. Like, like I'm always making it. Like if I'm like, which you've clearly, thought about before, but it's like, I don't, there is no, this, you always imagine when you're a kid, oh, so-and-so made it. But
right.
I mean, it's always happening. It's always, there's nothing guaranteed.
Right. Right.
It's like, are you doing it? Or like, there's no point at which you sit back and you're like, I'm going to not do anything for the rest of my life. I mean, you still, even if you can do that,
right.
Like, you got to make it. I mean, you got to keep making it.
So, Gabe, let me ask you something. When you started with your band Six Shooter.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things happened before that, clearly. But I'm curious about the time, those years between 1977 and 1998, with the Gabe Dixon Band and going to University of Miami. Like, what were the in-between years for you? Were they pretty steady
when I
working?
Was born to when I like what?
Just the early years, the arc of your career and growing up in your family. Let's talk about your family.
When I was a child, we moved around because my dad was in medical school in Italy for 2 years. So we lived there when I was a little bitty, and then we moved to Texas when I was a couple years old. That's where my parents actually. They discovered Stevie Ray Vaughan because he was big in Texas in the early 80s when we were there. And then we moved to Nashville when I was 5. Okay. And so I remember music. My parents were not musicians. My mom did take piano for a few years, and they weren't professional musicians, but they were huge music fans. They always had records playing in the house. They had Beatles, they had Stevie Ray Vaughan, they had Elton John, they had like Joe Cocker and Blood, Sweat and Tears and Allman Brothers Band and Paul Simon and Ray Charles and B.B. King, and like they were always playing music. And it was important. We would go see music. We'd go see the symphony. And they said they remember when I was 3 years old, we were at symphony in the park, and I just stood up and started just like conducting the orchestra, like this is it. This is my, and then when I was about 5 years old, we were in Nashville. I so wanted to play this little song that I'd heard called Little Town of Bethlehem. Sure. Right. And it was in this book, the melody. And so I said, Mom, can you write the names of the notes over the notes? And then, and she was like, yeah, okay, sure. And then I figured out the notes on the keyboard, on the piano. I took a green marker and I wrote every single note on the key,
on the white keys
of the piano, so I can match them up and be like, oh, little town, And so then my mom was kind of like, I think I should probably get piano lessons,
That could have gone either way, because you might have needed to find a new place to live.
Right. And I give her props for not like, I don't
destroying
remember
the piano.
Getting mad.
You're
I
right.
don't remember her getting mad at all, which, she was encouraging. But I remember a very important thing for me early on was when my mom was blasting opera in the house. And I was probably 5 or 6 maybe. And she was just weeping, like just crying. Oh. And I was like, what's the matter? What's the problem? Because you cry when you're upset, right? And she was like, no, it's just the music is just so beautiful. And I that just was that hit me hard. I was like, oh, music can do that to people. Wow. Okay.
What a wonderful invitation, to just fall into that pool of joy of music, to be shown that. By the way, what about singing? Did you start singing just naturally, or was that something?
I just played piano for a long time, but secretly when I was 11, I started learning like Elton John songs and Beatles songs, but I would never, and like Ray Charles, Jerry Lee Lewis, but I would never sing for anybody. Forget about it, never. But then when I was 12 years old, I went to camp, and there was a talent show at the end of the week, and I decided to enter the talent show. And
that's brave.
Yeah,
or
I don't
fearless.
know what came over me.
Good for you.
But I knew this one pretty well. I was gonna, and I decided to sing Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis, which was like, I could play that and sing it great.
Right.
So I did it, and the place just erupted. It was like the most fun I'd ever had, and the most exciting thing ever in my life. And I looked at the piano afterward. There were literally blood and like bits of my skin on the piano, and I was bleeding, and I was like, because I do all these glisses,
Sure. Yeah.
And it was just like, this is amazing. And so the next summer, I had the courage to, the same summer, I had the courage to audition for this band that my mom looked up that ended up being this teen country boy band project thing. But that's how I started really learning how to sing, because we spent hours and hours in the studio singing these songs that, I didn't necessarily think were that great. It was all put together. People would send songs in and we would sing them. But there was before Pro Tools and like pitch correction and all that stuff, so I had to sing it on pitch and with feeling and attitude. And if I didn't get it, I had to go back and punch the line in, and we were over and over and over. And so I don't consider myself I'm not like a operatic, like naturally gifted, like blow the roof off the place kind of voice, but I did learn how to sing on recordings pretty well, just from doing it so much as a teenager.
What a great way to learn, because tape doesn't lie.
No, it doesn't. And after I sang something flat like 5 times in a row, and they're like, it's still a little flat. And so I had to figure out, how do I, think above the note and try
Mhm.
it. Okay, see how that works. And oh wow, okay. And you just learn all these little tricks that maybe some teen artists don't learn. I don't know
Right.
if they're like, no, it sounded great. We'll fix it in the
Right.
we'll edit
Right.
it.
Yeah, that's when we really had to make it count and still emote, still
Yeah.
tell a story at the same time. And hence Babe Dixon was born through that experience, that teenage experience.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
that
That's right.
began.
You got it.
So
You got it.
so Gabe, at any point, either as a teenager or when you went to University of Miami, did you take formal vocal lessons to develop your instrument, or you just completely
I
natural?
sang in church choir growing
Okay.
up, and we had someone come in and give us a lesson one time.
To vocalize and
Yeah,
warm up.
not even to warm up, just how to breathe.
Okay.
So I got that lesson, and then in college I sang in ensembles. I didn't get voice lessons, but I sang like in men's chorale, and I
Mm-hmm.
sang in couple of jazz vocal ensembles, and would pick up little tips here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took another lesson after I graduated college from somebody, and no, but I never like had a steady thing. I tell you what, though, I went to the Vanderbilt voice clinic one time because I was having problems with my voice,
Mm-hmm.
and they told me a lot in one lesson that
Oh.
I still use today. With
Mm-hmm.
singing and how to sing without straining and how to get a pure tone. And then David Kahn, who's a
Mm-hmm.
producer who produced my band's sort of first major label album in 2001, I guess. He had a lot. I used to sing with a lot of bravado before that when I was starting my band, just like.
Mm-hmm.
And he got me to try to sing a little bit more like a talk,
Mm-hmm.
and that was important to hear because I think I can deliver a song better when I do it that way rather than trying to like put on some voice. So
I've been told by a couple of vocal coaches and my wife, who's a singer as well, that it's really the best way to do it is like what you're saying. You're speaking the story with pitch.
yeah, I mean, and that seems like it would resonate more with people anyway because
Right.
It's talking, but you're so well. That's good. That's good to hear.
Well, so here's something about your parents that's really kind of interesting, and then we'll get back to music. But you've been a vegetarian your whole life because your parents raised you as a vegetarian.
That's true. Yeah.
Are they still vegetarians? And do you find it challenging on the road? Speaking as somebody who is also a healthy eater and mindful eater.
It used to be more challenging on the road than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
But I've sort of become more of a, I guess I'm anywhere from 75% to 100% plant-based vegan now. So that
Mm-hmm.
gets still really challenging on the road, especially when you're with other people who
Sure.
eat meat or eat eggs or whatever. That's hard, but I'm used to it. My folks are still vegetarian, and that's just how it was for them. My mom in the 60s, I guess, decided she was done eating meat because of watching her grandmother, killing the chickens on the farm and
sure.
stuff like that. It was kind of like, do I want to eat that?
Right.
And so then she kind of, after she started dating my dad, within a couple years, he decided he wanted to be vegetarian as well. And then they raised me and my brother and sister that way. And my sister and I we don't eat meat. And then my brother, he started eating meat when he was about 14, and he still does. But
yeah.
No, I'm really, I'm actually really grateful that they did that because I've talked to a lot of people who, when I tell them I'm vegetarian, they're like, "Oh, how long you been vegetarian?" Oh, okay. How long is this going to go on? It's like, no, because a lot of people want to be, or they try to be. And then they're like, "Oh, I just couldn't do it. I had to, because this is we're not really set up for vegetarians and vegans. Like in society. And that is the hardest part about it, I think. It's just the social, like the practicality of it, because our supply chains and whatever restaurants don't serve it as much as I would like. And just kind of the wall it puts up between people. I think that's a thing.
Right.
I don't want to put demands on what kind of food I can eat, but for people, especially someone invites me to their house, or
me too. Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to eat an animal if I don't have to be healthy. So it's a tough thing, but I'm really happy that I didn't have to like make that choice and stick with that choice.
Right.
Right. I've never eaten meat. So, and my wife, she became vegetarian about the time that you said you did, about 15.
I was 15.
Or so.
Yeah.
So she's still with me.
And so now that you're a dad, you have 2 kids. Are you bringing them up vegetarian?
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
So the 12 and 5.
And so far
This is great. Yeah. And I have
Not a
myself
big
as a reference. It's like the fact that I grew up and I ate worse than they do. Growing up, we were just eating fried cheat sandwiches.
Sure. Oh, right.
I mean, it wasn't exactly healthy, but at least, I survived, and so I feel great about the decision.
What else I know you run. What else do you do to stay healthy? I mean, that's a big deal.
I do run. Man, I mean, the eating thing is the main thing. I try to eat just tons of fruits and vegetables,
live foods,
and legumes and whole grains. I mean, that's kind of the thing. And after a show, if the tour manager plops down a big pizza with cheese all over it, like, it's kind of hard to not have a piece sometimes.
Sure.
But I do my best, and I go through phases where I meditate on a regular basis. I need to get back into that for sure. And I try to maintain a positive attitude in general.
Is that hard for you?
Not really. Occasionally it is.
But mostly it's a choice.
Yeah. It seems like it. And I forget it's a choice sometimes.
Or a daily practice, like practicing the piano or guitar.
Yeah. And like I say, and physical activity has a lot to do with it for me personally.
Yeah. That keeps me straight.
And sometimes I'll forget. When I get super depressed, it's usually one of 2 things. Either I haven't gone running and like done exercise in a while, or I haven't played music.
Me too.
In a while. And that's kind of and it's like, then you do it and you're like, oh wow, that was all it was.
And if it's not one of those 2 things, it's from watching the news.
Yes.
That right there.
Right, Lisa?
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's just like, keep your TV off unless you can control what you're watching, and the news should not be it.
Yeah, it's tough because you want to inform yourself, but it's just like you got to set a limit.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Because you can go pretty deep,
Yeah. Although I still agree, I think we all have a responsibility to stay informed. Just not exhausted.
Exactly. Not 10 times a day with the same news. On a Yeah. Yeah.
Gabe, I want to ask you something I've been meaning to ask you for a long time. I'm going to read a quote of yours and then get to the question. And then let's talk more about the new record and get into that. Another quote of yours. Early on, I treated playing with other people as an either or thing in regards to my own career. As time went on, though, I started to see it more as a both and situation where the lines were more blurred and everything I was doing was part of the bigger goal of bringing as much beautiful music into the world as possible. Beautifully and very clearly said.
Thanks.
And I connect with what you're saying on that because I've done both as well, being an artist and being a sideman and doing all those things. You sang and played with Paul McCartney and, did some recording with him. Yeah. And we didn't know each other back then, but I knew your music and and had read, that you were working with McCartney, and then you stepped away to pursue your own career.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of dumbfounded that anybody would step away from not just a gig, but that kind of a gig, because he's a unique artist to work for, not just musically and historically, but he takes care of his musicians. He not many artists do like he does. And I thought that was like a really courageous or bold move on your part, but I was a little baffled by it, because I was thinking
it was just stupid.
Well,
my mom was like, "What are you doing?"
Well, I just looked at it and I went, "Can't he do both? Like, doesn't actually one lift the other? Doesn't being featured in Paul McCartney's band make more people know who Gabe Dixon is? Mm-hmm. And then your music speaks for itself." So
I mean, it was an
what was that like for you?
Situation, because Paul is like this, one of the main reasons I started playing music.
Well,
I love him so much. So much respect for him, and he's such a great guy, and so talented. And we did this album for 6 weeks at Henson Studios in LA, and I had just recorded my band's album in the same studio with the same producer.
Right, formerly A&M Records. Yeah,
exactly.
A&M studio. Yeah.
Now it's got Kermit the Frog on the roof. Yeah.
It sure does.
With the top hat or whatever, the cane. And but so we recorded, me and Paul and Abe Laboriel Jr. and Rusty Anderson.
Oh, sure.
With David Kahn as the producer, and it was a dream come true for me, And so we did that, and we did a couple other gigs. But at the same time, I had this album that I had just made. I was signed to Warner Brothers Records. It was finished. It was ready to come out. I convinced my band to like move with me from Miami up to New York. We were all living together. We were trying to make it. And so, and Warner Brothers was like, "Hey, we're going to release this record. We're going to
put you on TV. Right.
2 years of tour support.
Wow.
And 2 years of a stipend, to live on." And I was kind of like, well, this really is and so then I did a couple gigs with Paul, the concert for New York City and another benefit, and
9/11 benefit, I believe.
That was the concert for New York City.
Okay, got it.
And then another one for Adopt a Minefield in Beverly Hills at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel with Paul Simon, and it was just so awesome. And and after the concert for New York, and I guess it was maybe October or something of that year, or November, he asked if I wanted to play the Super Bowl and do the tour for the new record, the full tour. And so I said, well, I'd love to play the Super Bowl. I don't know if I can do a 2-year tour because I got this record deal with my band, and I'd have to kind of walk away from that. So for me, it felt like like David Kahn said, it was like the definition of a dilemma. I mean, either way I win in a way, and either way I lose in a way.
Right.
So I kind of felt like it was like, well, what do I really want to do? What makes me come alive? Most playing keyboards for Paul McCartney, or singing and playing and riding in a van with my band and singing my own songs in a Gabe Dixon Band. So it was like I just had to make a decision, and I decided to believe in myself, I guess.
So your aunt was wrong about you. It wasn't a stupid move.
No, my mom.
In hindsight, or your mom. Right.
I don't think it was stupid. No, I said in 10 years, I'm either going to look back and regret. I mean, which would I regret more? Would I regret walking away from Paul's gig, or would I regret walking away from a major label deal doing what I really love to do most?
Yeah.
Never knowing how it would have worked out, So I was like, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
I gotta just go with my heart.
Thank you for answering that. I've always wondered, how you managed to make that decision. I mean, I understood it, but I also understand your perspective now. One informs the other. You can do both. You can achieve both. Perhaps not at that time.
Right. Yeah. That's what I like. If it was if it was like 3 years later, I would have said, yeah. But it was
or earlier. Right.
Or earlier. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Wow. Well played.
Thanks.
Let's talk about your new album, Lay It On Me. And, you said, I've never done a record like this. There were no constraints, no expectations. It's the most myself I've ever been on an album, which just made the whole experience refreshing and fun.
Yeah. Well, it's like you were saying, it's like you were talking about me saying my whole journey has been learning to believe in myself. And I think
Yeah.
part of it comes from that first like teen band that was put together. It was formulaic. They told us the songs to sing. We had managers and a record deal, and they said, go here, sing this, do this video. And it was all like, I didn't really have any say in anything. And
Right.
then gradually over time, it's been like this learning that, wait a minute, I have some authority here in in the music I put out in the world.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of what was happening with this album. I didn't have I didn't shop for a record deal. Like I went, I just started recording stuff.
Right.
And decided what kind of album I wanted it to be. And every day we would do a different song. We were in, I mean, some of them were already written, most of them were already written. And I just decided to get with Dustin and realize them, with whatever instruments I wanted.
Right. You set the tone of the record beautifully, because the title track is Lay It On Me, the album title, but you do a solo piano intro, as a prelude, essentially. I mean, you have a classical musical background, from growing up, but also studying classical piano in Miami. But I think I just loved it. It just sort of brought me into your world. It feels like you when you play, but also you just, tonally and emotionally, that starts the album, and it's beautifully bookend at the end by Last Train Home, which is kind of like, I'll be going that way for I'll see in a bit. It's but sort of emotionally and lyrically, it's beautifully bookended.
Yeah.
I know that you appreciate the art of making an album, the arc of the entire story. And there's an art to sequencing songs. Was this one any more challenging than the others because you had played, it was a different experience, the way you were more connected to each performance?
I wouldn't say it was more challenging. It was more. I got to do more of what I've always wanted to. It was more a record. I thought of this more as a whole piece than any other album I've done. I've always wanted to have little instrumental interludes that were just in between the songs. And I've got a couple of those on here, like the intro you mentioned, and then there's kind of a long outro to this other song.
Even the vocal outro to one of the songs where, which it sounds like you left the tape running and forgot, and I mean, I know it's intentional, but it was really great because you pull back the curtains of the playfulness of just singing. It's loose and fun, and
exactly. And I just kind of, and the other thing I wanted is I just started thinking about albums and the ones that I really love. And my first album on Warner Brothers was like 75 minutes long. And even I would get to like halfway through and be like, okay, all right, turn this off.
Enough of this guy.
I was like, what's the least amount of songs I can put on a record and still call it, an LP?
Right.
Because I want people to get to the end of the album and like have it start over again and they're like psyched about it,
Right.
And so that was sort of my goal. I wanted to, like, some of my favorite albums from, I don't know, the 60s or whatever, 70s, they're 35 minutes long.
Right. They're 8 or 10 songs.
Yeah. And so I thought, let's make something that's as bite-sized as an album can be, that without being as small as an EP,
So as you were writing and recording, you just, as a producer and arranger, you also just had this sense of each song connecting to the next song in some way, even if it was sort of not the forefront of your thinking, but it was still in the mix. It was all connected. It was one big story
I'd say
with
so. I mean,
chapters.
I wouldn't say it has a narrative arc necessarily, but we tried a few different sequences like I
Right.
usually do. And some of them were already baked in. Like we knew the outro for this one song was going to be after that song. We knew the intro to Lay It On Me would be before. But it just felt like a nice way to start the album, to start with just the piano.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I've
Yeah.
never done that before, and it's
Yeah.
like, welcome into my little world here, in my introverted, introspective piano world. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Call it.
Hey, before I open it up to audience questions or Dr. Lisa, you've always got amazing and interesting things to say. But I wanted to let everybody know that you're going to be touring again this year, and you've got some more music that you're going to be releasing throughout the year, which I'm really excited about. Do you want to tell everybody where they can look for you?
Yeah. I'll be, I've got one random gig called the Sea Leaf Festival in Outer Banks, North Carolina in June, but then I'm doing this tour called the Wheels of Soul Tour in late June and all through July. I'll be opening for Los Lobos and Tedeschi Trucks Band with my trio, but I'll also be playing keyboards in Tedeschi Trucks Band. So that'll be a busy summer, but it'll be a great opportunity to see what I'm doing with my trio.
Yeah.
And my trio and we recorded a couple of live things recently that I'm going to turn into a live release, I think, in the first half of this year. And also I'm recording some new songs in March, I think. So the plan is for there to be a lot of new music released in the new year,
right,
and lots of great opportunities to see. I think we're doing, we're playing Red Rocks at the end of July.
Fantastic.
A couple nights, and we're playing lots of great venues around the country. And I think they might even be having like a West Coast version of the tour starting in late August. So
I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
All
that stuff's on my website too. It's all on the tour page of GabeDixon.com.
GabeDixon.com. I encourage everybody to go there. And also, a shameless plug for Gabe and for all artists right now, go to Gabe's Spotify channel and subscribe. You've got about 80,000 subscribers already, which is fantastic. And I just want to remind all of you that it doesn't cost anything to subscribe. And it's the way that we can sort of monetize music right now. I mean, please download as well, but it's so easy just to, if you're going to listen, subscribe, because that's where artists get paid.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. And it's and you talking about this the new tour, Gabe, it's kind of pretty perfect based on the things that we've been talking about right now, about it's not an all or nothing or a sideman or an artist path. You've just completely merged the two, because you're opening with your band for a band that you play in, the Tedeschi Trucks Band, that you're a member of, and they're friends of yours and collaborators. So it really speaks to not just the truth, but sort of this place that you're at in your life where you are coming to a realization that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both.
And the thing I used to think it was like somehow lesser if I was a side person, like supporting someone else.
Right.
But what I've learned over time is like, not everybody can do that. Not everybody can fill that role.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the musical skills and like the ability to support, and like, so why not do it if it's something I'm like also good at, And
do you find that sometimes it confuses people, that they think, well, if you're a side guy, how can you be an artist? But some people like you are really good at both.
Mm-hmm.
And again, one complements and informs the other. That makes the other part of you even greater.
Yeah, and thank you. And I heard Vince Gill say something similar like a few years ago. He's a local Nashville. Well, he's a great performer, country artist, great guitar player. And he said, "I'll play with anybody." He was just like, I'll play anybody's charity. I'll play if they're good. I just want to sit back and play guitar, or
Right.
I'll sing lead, or I'll do whatever, And so that
Right.
was inspiring to me, because he's a great front man,
Yeah.
But if he's willing to just, and that's like part of where that quote comes from. I'm here to bring music into the world, and however that works out is fine with me, as long as I like the people I'm working with,
Yeah.
So,
my buddy Kebmo, who I imagine you know.
Not that well, but I've met him a couple times.
Yeah, you guys need to write together if that hasn't
awesome.
happened yet. Yeah, I can't wait to hear that song. But Kevin told me, I played in his band for a year, and we've been friends for a long time, and he said we're in the joy business. That's our job, is to bring
I love that.
Is to bring joy to people through music, but also part of that job is to be happy and healthy. That's the job, for you to have a good life, so that you can share that with others and lift them.
It's good to remember.
That's the gig. I know it really put a whole different perspective on it for me, because again, like, you're a healthy guy, you spiritually, physically, emotionally, you're a family guy. You've created this beautiful family. But it's good to just be reminded that makes you a better musician.
Yeah.
And a better songwriter.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that they're in competition.
Right.
But you're right. It does. It makes me better. Definitely.
Yeah. Nobody had ever explained it to me quite that way, but Kevmo said it very simply, and boy, that stuck with me. Just like all will be well. There's things that you carry through life.
Well, he's a wise man.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Hey, before we get to closing questions, Dr. Lisa, do you or any of our virtual guests have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I do, Gabe. This has been another joy, and I have to tell you, I'm so glad I had a veggie burger while I'm in this safari.
Me too.
Animals, and I'm like, I'm veggie today.
Plant-based.
I'm kind of plant-based in it these days. You awesome. Actually made me think of so many things. Early on, you were talking about just knowing that this is something you were going to do. Jay Leno used to had a quote that went something like, "Don't have a fallback." Don't have a fallback, because it makes you move differently in the world when you don't have something to fall back on. You just go after the thing that you want. And then when you were talking about Paul McCartney, it reminded me of a quote, and I can't remember who the author is, but it says, "Build your own dreams, or someone will pay you to build theirs."
That's kind of true.
And so I love Paul, but I get it, because you were at a point in your career where you could go, I got a fork in the road. This one is going to be great just because of who he is. But my volleyball coach said you can cheer if you want to. So decide if you want to cheer for other people or be cheered for. And so you did your own thing. So I just want to call you a unicorn.
Thank you.
You just followed that intuition that seemed to be in your belly at every single turn. And every turn has worked out. And that doesn't mean it was all easy or that it was perfect or you didn't fail, but it still worked out. And that's making it. It's making it at every opportunity. So I don't even have a question for you. This has been like an educational experience. Like I'm walking through this thing going, I should have been taking notes, but it's recorded.
Right. And it's archived. You can listen again.
I tell people that you can see GabeDixon.com, go to his website so you can check out the new album and a bunch of other stuff that you can find. And you'll see the link on our ticker thing going on down there. But thank you for this. Another wonderful Terry Wollman experience.
Thank you, Lisa and Terry. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Gabe and Lisa. I appreciate you both so much. And everybody who's listening to the show live and archived. We all appreciate you. I can speak on behalf of Gabe and I on that. I want to get to the closing questions. There's 3 questions I ask all of my guests. And the first one you touched on, since this show is called Making It. What does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally?
At this point, making it means making a living at music,
right?
Doing music that I enjoy, and making it enough that I can send my kids to college
Mm,
and
right.
maintain a happy marriage, which balance has a lot of it is about balance for me right now.
Mhm.
But the goal for me has changed from be rock star when I was like 20, 22 or whatever to continue making a living at music.
Right.
And that's, if I'm doing that and my family is happy, then I'm making it.
How do you find balance? How do you keep that? How do you walk that line?
For me, it's very important to well, when it comes to balancing family, my wife and I have to talk, because I've been touring a lot since I joined Tedeschi Trucks Band, and even
Of
before
course.
that,
Yeah.
toured with my own stuff. And this coming year will be probably the most touring I've ever done.
Hmm.
We have to talk every day on the phone or FaceTime or whatever, and my her being my partner, it's just been a real teacher to me
Mm,
on just like everything I learned growing up, like, you know, on about right and wrong and this and that. I'm using all of it in my marriage, and
hmm.
so you know, making her first in my life.
Hmm.
That is that's like number one for me, because I've only made one promise like in my whole life, was like promise to the universe and like all my friends and family that I would do something, and it was to be married to her. So I'm kind of like,
Hmm.
that's kind of like, all right, I've found like
Hmm.
if I put that first, she happens to be really cool, so that works out, thankfully. But then a lot of other things fall into place. But I also have to remember the things we talked about, like
Hmm.
remembering to keep healthy and like exercise, and not forgetting that I do have to play music for my mental health, and I feel like it's part of my job, you know.
Hmm.
And just trying to be kind to people. That's about the best I can do
Yeah.
as far as balance. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm doing here in Chicago tonight. You know,
Right?
it's to see my
Well,
wife, she's been on the road.
well, and I think about this a lot lately. Like, there were plenty of times in my life when I could have said, "This is what needs to be done for me to be a super successful, like, touring artist,
Right.
rock
Right.
star.
Right.
If I do this, that will be a lot more likely to happen. But this other part of my life will fall apart."
Right.
I could have done that, and I chose not to do that.
Hmm.
So it's like, well, okay, I don't get all of that, but I don't necessarily get all of this either. And I'm like, just take it one day at a time and
Yeah.
try to follow my gut and my intuition. Like, sounds like you do as well. So,
Yeah, I believe in just the slow and steady arc, and if I don't get there as quick as if I'm having a good life and people around me are having a good life because of that, that feels better to me. And I know, like, one of the things that I read about you as well is that it's important to you also just to not just bring joy, but be an inspiration to your wife and your kids. That's something
I hope so.
that's important to you. I mean, it's a goal for you along with everything else.
Well, they inspire me. I
Mm,
think I try to set a good example for my
right.
boys. Um, and I don't know if I'm like trying necessarily to be an inspiration to my wife, but I try to be supportive. She's so supportive of me,
Right.
that like I feel like I'm always catching up, and like behind the. It's always the skill. I'm like, oh no, I always have to do a little more, because she's just a very giving, supportive
Well,
person.
it's kind of perfect that you found each other.
Yeah,
Sounds like a good match.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is.
Gabe, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Tips for success. Oh my gosh. Visualization is really important.
Mm,
I think. I mean, having a goal,
right.
uh, even if it's not. Um, uh, I think it's good to set goals and have deadlines. At least for me, that always works, because otherwise, it'll just stuff will slide away.
Right.
And again, with the intuition, I think that's not as concrete or easy to define, but every time I've really trusted my intuition, pretty much every time it's been the right thing to do. And sometimes it takes courage and, creating conflict, but, it's good. And I think just like Philip Glass, I was watching some video interview documentary on Philip Glass, who's the composer.
Yeah.
And they're like, so what's your secret? Like, what's your thing? Like, how have you been able to do all of this? And he's like, well, I just get up and I work all day and then I go to sleep, So it's kind of, I just stay busy.
Yeah.
And to the point where I'm almost burnt out and then I take a break.
Right.
I don't know.
Sounds like we have that in common.
I mean, yeah.
Which also, by the way, explains how you've written hundreds of songs. We have barely, seen the tip of the iceberg of all this music that you've created and continue to create.
Who knows where, because they were just a random co-write. But they're out there somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
My final question, and I have so many more questions, but my final question for today in this conversation is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
To my younger self, just, God, I don't know. Keep at it. It's all going to work out. But then I might get complacent. So I don't know if I want my younger self to hear that. I guess, don't forget to, enjoy yourself. I don't know. That's a really hard question.
It would be hard for me to answer as well. Yeah.
I think maybe because I wouldn't want to necessarily, it's hard to know. That's the kind of thing. It's hard to know what, because I feel like I'm in a place where I'm generally happy and like somewhat successful, but I probably would have told myself earlier on to seek out maybe a counselor or something, because I had a stigma for a long time about seeing a counselor, like it was like you had something wrong with you.
Right.
And it wasn't until the past, 10 years or so where I was encouraged to just talk to somebody every once in a while about whatever's on my mind. And I realized that it's actually a really, kind of really helps a lot if you find the right person.
Right.
So I probably would have told myself in my 20s to find somebody who you can visit with every once in a while and talk through some things that are maybe bugging you or causing you some stress, and so you can get some perspective on it.
Right.
I think that's probably what I would have done.
It's nice to hear you say that. I agree with you on that. Mental health and getting over, like you said, the stigma of thinking that there's something wrong with you, instead of there are a lot of things right with you that you would want to make your life even better.
Yeah.
It's like, we take care of our instruments.
Right.
We tune our car up. Why wouldn't we tune our mind up and our emotional well-being to take care of that? Like we go to the doctor, for a sore throat.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, well, I'm glad that's worked for you. Yeah. That would have been nice to hear earlier on too in my life. It took, it took going to adulthood to figure out that seeking help, mental health help, getting a good counselor is a great thing, to do at various points of your life. And I agree with you. I absolutely do. Well said. Is Gabe, last words, anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
I just want to say thanks for listening, and thanks to you for bringing me on. I'm glad we finally got to connect somehow.
Me too.
So thank you.
Me too. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to have you on the show, and excited about your new record and all the things that are coming up for you. this coming year. So I'll keep my ears out and look forward to seeing you on the West Coast, or if I'm traveling somewhere where you're going to be, I'll make sure to reach out and make a point to come see you. And
Awesome.
for those who haven't seen Gabe live, you got to, and I've seen you, play with the band, but I've seen solo shows too. And those are always a blast. You on an upright piano.
Oh, I enjoy
It's
those
pretty
a lot.
cool.
I did a big full band show this last week, and I had somebody come up to me a few days later, and they were like, "I love you with the band. It's so awesome." But I really just need you on the piano. So
right.
That made me kind of feel good. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, they're both great. Well, Gabe, wonderful to see you, and great to catch up with you. Thanks for sharing your story and making the time to join Lisa and I and our audience. I really appreciate you as well.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thank you.
And everybody, all of our listeners, stay safe, stay inspired. Thank you.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.